lot of the relationships and the established foundation of who we are at Trade Ideas was really here in San Diego back in 1998. Fast forward a couple years, we all went home and started trading from home because the internet speeds were getting faster. And Dan and Brad created a software company, a guy that Dan had kind of helping him assistant. And what happened to him was the worst thing that could ever happen to anybody. He came in, and his first day of trading live, he was following everybody in the room, and he made $50,000 in one day on Dell. Now that ruined him because he spent the rest of his career dwindling money away. It was sad to watch. He never really understood why he made $50,000, and he kept chasing it and had no money management, no risk management. The worst thing that can happen is that you just get a giant windfall and you think this is easy.
As you mentioned, you hear the story all the time with lottery winners. XYZ person won $10 million, and you're like, oh man, if I won $10 million, I would, pay off my house and put the rest in something that makes me 5-10% a year and live the rest of my days not worrying about whatever. But the story after story is they win it, they lose it all, and then they're back broke a couple years later. 2008, I think, right, definitely killed a lot of those. They bought houses they couldn't afford and mansions and all of this. So it's the same with trading. People come into trading and they're looking to make that big score, but the ones who trade for a long period of time are looking to make small, consistent gains over their life. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the interview series here at Trade Ideas. We're going to do something a little different for the next few weeks, where before I was talking to affiliates of Trade Ideas and other traders and software developers and CEOs and things like that. But we're gonna bring things home for a bit, and we're going to talk to different people at Trade Ideas. You see a lot of me, and you see a lot of the person that I'll be interviewing today, but there are a lot more employees at Trade Ideas that are helping us build this product, that are traders, that are helping you guys with support, that are doing the grunt work and the dev work. And I think it'd be interesting to kind of hang out with those people and say, hey, it's not just us out there talking to everybody. There's a whole team behind Trade Ideas that are helping push this along. But we're going to start with my podcast co-host and Steve, where we talk every week. If you're not tuned into the podcast, it's on this channel. Make sure you go check it out. But we're going to talk not so much about the markets and headlines and things that we normally do. We're just going to go into Steve's background when it comes to trading, how he got introduced to Trade Ideas, how he started here, all that kind of stuff. And hopefully there'll be some good lessons for traders along the way. So without further ado, Steve, why don't you take a quick second here as I blast you on full screen and just introduce yourself to the people.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, Steve Gomez, and been around for a while. I've been trading since literally 94. I'll get into that. I'm glad you started with me because hierarchically speaking, I am user number 3 here at Trade Ideas. So we'll get into that as well. I was the very first user to try the first beta version of Trade Ideas and kind of help get the company going as a user, just to be a trader, because the company is built by traders for traders.
Yeah, and that's great. Let's just pop here. Okay. So that's great now. And that's one of the things I think I'm going to start with a lot of the traders, just to show that, again, more than you normally see out there. There is a lot of us there, and we are kind of building this software for stuff that we want. So I always love that, for traders by traders. I think there's a lot of trading softwares that you see that are built by devs, and you can almost tell they're built by devs, right? They may be a little bit flashier or something like that, but they don't have the core features and the improvements and the constant focus on the markets that we do and that we bring to you. So you mentioned 1994 to start trading. So that, anytime someone talks about that, that makes me think of the 2000s, which, if anyone is watching this and doesn't know, was an insane time to start trading the markets, where volatility was probably as high as it's ever been. Since then, maybe the great financial crisis, but that's about it. But so tell me, how you got started, why you got started, and a little bit about that kind of wild west of day trading time.
Sure. I knew I was coming to talk to you today, and I was having some thoughts about my recently passed father, and literally, I owe it all to him. He loved trading. He got into trading and he got me excited about trading. So I just don't know how much more lucky a person could be to be there with your father as your mentor,
Hmm.
showing you it can be done and giving you a lot of great ideas along the way. Now, he and I worked together up until 1998. In 94, 95, we kind of had a fun little a bet going, and I had a few $1,000s, and we opened up a Lind Waldock account. That's a futures and commodity account out of Chicago. Now, remind you, this is pre-internet, guys. I had a satellite hookup with 20-minute delayed data at the end of the day to complete my charts. That's what I was kind of working with, and we had this revolutionary thing created by eSignal called Quotrek. Now, anybody that's been around for a while and knows exactly what I'm talking about. If you're in 1995 and you've got this black handheld thing with LCD readout on it and a long antenna, it was taking information from an FM signal tower and giving you live data. That was something that was just revolutionary. So we used to fight over it. Matter of fact, when you interview Brad, you can talk to him about this because we worked together. And my dad and Brad and I were all involved, running up and down the stairs. Look at cotton, look at live cattle, look at pork bellies today. So that got an excitement about the market. Now, that was all part time. That was fun. That was learning. I read books and I did things. But fast forward to 98, the income property that we were all working with was sold, and all of us went our own ways. And by that time, we had some capital built up and we had some excitement about what we wanted to do next. There was no doubt in our mind. Now, call it serendipity, whatever you want. Right around that time, I'll never forget it. It was April 1998. I believe it was Forbes. There's a picture of this young kid named Serge Millman, just wide-eyed, and the article was "New Traders Take Over Electronic Markets." Now, 95, 96, 97, I thought, boy, I would love to go to Chicago and trade the markets live, but I was not one to stand in a pit, live in a snowy country, a snowy city, and stand and scream all day long. That just wasn't for me. So when I saw that technology was bringing what we called ECNs, electronic crossing networks, and bringing those into the fold, into the montage of a level two quote, that allowed the individual to be, at those days, at a T1 trading desk with a high speed transfer line with a bunch of traders who could bid and offer on these ECNs. Now, mind you, we were still trading fractions. You're bidding in at $50 and a quarter, you're flipping at $50.75. And there's 16th waypoints. So there wasn't decimals and there wasn't computers. We were trading mano a mano. I was trading against a guy holding his calzone at Merrill Lynch in New York.
Hmm.
MLCO was his moniker. And it was, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was easier because there was a human element, there was no machines, and it was just kind of a real Wild West electronic poker game. So, as I said, serendipity came along, and Brad noticed in the local newspaper somebody was coming to town and teaching people how to do this new direct access trading. So, again, we were kind of just opened the door, and the stairway was lit. We go, and a side story, a friend of mine from college is there, and it was just like, wow, this is like meant to be. Dan Merkin walks out, the CEO of Trade Ideas, and at the time he was brought in as a hired gun to Cornerstone Securities to help new traders understand what's going on in the market, help them open accounts, help them figure out what's going on. So we took a crash course from Dan Merkin in July of 1998. Now, this is right when Dell, Cisco, they were going crazy. Microsoft, all those stocks were just the four horsemen. Oracle, Sun Microsystems was in there too. And then all of a sudden, the internet started to come out. AOL, Yahoo. Who are these people? DoubleClick, and so it was just the Wild West. And basically, you could buy stocks high and sell them higher, and that was the way we did it. A month later, Andy Lindloff, who you will also be interviewing,
Hmm.
that's one big happy family here. We go back a
Yeah.
long way. Joined Dan's class behind me. So he's a class behind me in terms of learning trading. And then from that point on, Andy and I kind of gravitated together, and we've been trading kind of side by side with a side direct message channel ever since. So a lot of the relationships and the established foundation of who we are at Trade Ideas was really created back in San Diego, here in San Diego, back in 1998. Um, Fast forward a couple years, we all went home and started trading from home because the internet speeds were getting faster. And Dan and Brad created a software company that I had nothing to do with, even though I traded there on the other trading floor. They realized that they were kind of in over their head, and Dan called it the $50 million lesson, where the venture capitalists came in and just kind of took over. And at that point, Dan and Phil, who I hope you'll be able to interview,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of slipped off and created a moonlighting side project, which instead of trying to focus on this entire trading platform, which is what they were involved with, called Future Trade, they said, we need to get back to just basics. There's nothing out there that is like a real time scanner that monitors high, low, close candles in 1 minute timeframes and gives us the kind of feedback and data that we can do. So he quietly kind of, started working on that side project, and then he left completely. And I get a call one day. I was living in Temecula, California, and he said, "Phil and I just started this, and let me ask you, Steve, if I could show you something in real time that's a pattern setup, what would it be?" And I said, "Well, Dan, if you could show me a stock that, like on a 15-minute chart or a 5-minute chart, that gaps up 2 or 3%, and then comes in and fills part of that gap, maybe 50% minimum threshold, turns and goes back to highs, I want to know about it. And if you can do that, I'll be forever grateful," which I am, because he did it. And that was my bread and butter day trader setup. I was a day
Yep.
trader back then. And that's how, as I said, you buy high and you sell higher. That was just a momentum setup that I loved. And of course, it started to not work after the market changed in 2001 when Abby Joseph, actually it was March 2000, when Abby Joseph Cohen from Goldman Sachs came out and lowered her portfolio exposure to stocks. And that was the spark that everybody was just kind of waiting for. And that broke. And then we had 9/11 and a lot of kind of dark ages years,
Yeah.
bounced around, doing a few things, still trading. But then 2008 came, and that's when things got really interesting. Um, I can go into what Andy and I were doing in China, but what I really wanted to say was that's when market structure changed. The
Yep.
decimals came about just after 2000, but what really, really was the big, big change was what we call fractured dark pool markets. So I think at last count at that time there was 13 dark pool markets outside of NASDAQ, NYSE, Amex that people in the industry, insiders, whatever you want to call them, pros, hedge funds, quants, they could trade on those dark pools. And what that did is it created an incentive to find out who could get the fastest information out there. And if you had the fastest information, you could make sub pennies and pennies all day long just by arbitraging latency of the market. So that's when everything just kind of went upside down. We lost the uh, market dynamics that I learned in. Therefore, that was the moment that Andy and I said, it's time to go to swing trading. There's too much noise here on these 5-minute charts with these quants and these, all that payment for order flow, et cetera. Let's just pull back and let the noise work itself out, and we'll go to a swing trade. And we kind of adapted what we were doing on a 5-minute chart onto a daily chart. And that's kind of the genesis of my favorite trade, 2 day and a half, 2 days trade.
Yep.
It's on a daily chart. Just that's all I need. Just give me the meat of the move. And that's what works for me. And ever since I have been doing it that way.
So what's awesome from that, and a couple takeaways I want for the audience is that, one, there's obviously a passion for it, right? That has to get going. But the other is the adaptation, right? And you hear this. I've interviewed a bunch of traders already, and I know a lot of the stories of the guys internally. I've been consulting with trade ideas for 5, 6 years now. But I went through the exact same thing when it came to, because I started to trade prop later than Steve, but around the same, 2008, 2009. And the idea of I did something, it was my bread and butter, it did great, everything was fantastic. Then something changes, and I've noticed there's always two kinds of traders, right? There's the ones that, rage against the dying light and go, no, we got to bring that back. That's how the market has to work. And the other ones that go, oh, that sucks, and find a kind of a new way. and a new way to kind of push on. One thing before we go further, I do want to chat about is a little bit about your old YouTube channel, and the reason for that is that that's how I actually got introduced to you, Steve, and Andy, and Trade Ideas, is because back before YouTube was YouTube, really, there was two, I would say, major accounts on there that talked about trading, and that was you guys with Today Trader and Brian Shannon, that guy over there. And for those who are young and don't understand about a time before YouTube, this was so old that I think you had to break your videos up to 5 minute clips. So it'd be like blah, 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 part one. And then you'd have to go, and the algorithm wasn't good enough to instantly show you part two. So you'd have to go and find part two and part three and part four. And what Steve and Andy would do there is they would just turn on the camera and point it at their screens and talk about what they were trading and why they were trading it. And for me, who was trading prop, I loved that because there was so much theory that you could all you could find that already, right? You buy a MACD cross or you do whatever, but there was always showing static charts after the fact, and the difference was with you guys, you were showing the trades as they were happening. So you would take an entry and then pause, and then you would take your exit and you would say, okay, this is what's happened in between, but you would see everything update live. So a, why did you get into that, considering that nobody else was doing it? And B, do you think that was a way to help your trading? Do you find that you learned a lot from recording and having to watch that back?
Yeah, I often tell people when you've got somebody watching over your shoulder, you tend to stick to your rules a little bit more. And I literally did have somebody watching my shoulder, and I told people you could pretend somebody's watching over your shoulder to try and get you in that moment. The other thing was Brian and I, or at least I did, I tried to show losers, and I got the best feedback from comments. People said, "I'm so glad you showed me that loser because it helped me understand when I'm in a losing trade." One, that it happens to everybody, and two, that maybe there's a better way to manage it, and you helped me understand that. So that was very unique, and it was one of the early things I was really fascinated about, because everybody out there was a guy named Harvey, I don't know his name, but he would just show these winners and winners, and everybody was a winner, and everybody could do it,
I
and I didn't
remember
want to.
that guy's videos. That they
Well,
were,
he's the one.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
so
was
he's to answer
huge,
your
huge scam.
question.
Yeah,
To answer your question, I'm like, this is crap. This guy is, sending people down the wrong road. I can do better. I had uh, just gotten into YouTube on and that red base over there. You can still search Today Trader, Base, Funk, whatever, and on that channel, whoever bought it from us, another story. That's how I got into recording stuff. I'm like, I'm going to play some bass and see what my peers think about it. Are they going to say you suck or not bad, mate?
hmm,
And so I was pleasantly surprised. I got some good feedback, so I kept going. That's one aspect. The other aspect, to answer your question, was in 2007 and 8. Andy and I secured a contract from a prop trading firm in China, just north of Beijing, in a city called Shenyang, and they traded U.S. markets only in the middle of the night. So they had no life there, and they basically lived in the evening. But they used trade ideas. And here's a funny story: the typical Chinese culture, they paid for two trade ideas licenses. One for like day trading, quick stuff, and another one for another account. And then they duplicated all of those accounts on screen. So I would walk into a floor and I would see 75, 80 traders in this one room. And between every third trader, there's a small screen with trade ideas on it showing the same thing. So they were all kind of just watching these duplication monitors. And I thought that was pretty crazy. And of course, I told Dan, but we were there under other auspices. And that was they had a pilot program to bring in Western mentor traders, kind of like you and I talked about what India needs, which is a whole other topic,
hmm.
bringing in Western mentor traders to show them different ways. And so they would break up different teams. This team went with this guy. This team went with Ty. This team went with myself. And then it's a grind going from California to China once a month. So
Oh
for
yeah.
a week. So Andy said, let's split this up. And he kind of brought me into the fold on that. And so it was a wonderful experience to go over there and do that. It was crazy. I'd kind of wander the streets during the day, half asleep, and then never had to really get acclimated to sleep, which was cool because we were still trading the U.S. markets. But Because of that, we came back and we wanted to keep in touch with our pool of traders, our students. And it was just about then that WebEx and Citrix and GoToMeeting were becoming popular. So we created a Citrix account, which they literally robbed us blind because they thought we were a corporation. Not too short long after that, GoToMeeting came along and catered to the retail person. And all of a sudden, we had access. Our when we weren't in China, our students could see what we were doing over here. So then it just became okay. This guy Harvey on YouTube is an idiot.
Hmm.
We've got to do better than that. I know how to upload. I've been doing base videos. Let's just run the screen recording and see what happens. And immediately, it kind of took off. And I was one of the first people to be doing it, along with Brian, of course. I think, and it carried out for a while, and it turned into an actual subscription. Andy and I turned it into a monthly subscription called Today Trader, and that was live trading like everybody's doing today with their Discord rooms. So we were kind of pioneers in doing that, but we never really just stuck with it. We just kept moving on and doing new things. And then around 2015, 16, of course, the opportunity came to work with Trade Ideas, which I really wanted to for many reasons. And so we sold the trademark Today Trader and just kind of walked away from that.
It's interesting. I found that Harvey Walsh guy too, and yeah,
Welsh.
yeah. I just the old videos. So I'm going back to those. Those are 13 years ago. It looks like the video
Mhm.
stopped, but yeah, I remember those. It was, I worked for. He was one of the originals. I worked for 2 minutes today and made 10 grand and absolutely no losers. And I hacked the market and
No value, no education.
nothing. No, and then not even. I doubt not even real trades. Nothing to it.
Mhm.
So it's just funny, but it shows that you know being early to something like that, where again there's no one else doing this on YouTube really at the time, is good. But more importantly, doing it legitimately. It's could you have maybe got a bigger following and crazier videos faster or whatever with all the BS, but as I see that, I see nothing about this guy who's from 15 years ago, and you're still sitting here today trading, and you're out there and doing a lot of that
Mhm.
stuff. So it shows that again, you can go for the fast stuff, or you can be legitimate and sleep well at night, knowing that you're right, you're not scamming anyone. So when so this is always interesting to me. So when Dan called you and said, "Hey, I have this new thing that I'm working on, and I want you to take a look at it," and you started trading with it, and I do remember seeing the videos on when Trade Ideas got started, when you were playing with that. So how did that transition to Dan going, okay, this thing's doing well. I need people who know what they're doing to help educate. Was that kind of your typical Dan just reached out and said, "You work for me now," or was there a funnier
Well, what
story
it
behind that?
was, we would run into each other a lot at the Stock Twits, Stocktoberfest meetups
Yep.
here in Coronado. There was always a good FinTwit social networking party. Everybody who was somebody. You interviewed Brian Lund. I used to hang out with him.
Mm-hmm.
And Shannon would come to town. Some of the guys from New York would come to town. Bat Nick and Josh, and so a lot of interesting, cool people. Oh God, who's our favorite? Kenny, love
Kenny
Kenny.
Glick. Yeah. Oh, I
Kenny
gotta make
Glick.
a note. I gotta
You
get
got to get
Kenny on
Kenny
here.
Glick on here. Write it down right
Absolutely.
now.
For those who don't know,
Tell him
that's
I
a good
said hey.
YouTube channel to check out.
Oh man,
He's an OG trader too, but he is. I don't think anyone has more fun than Kenny Glick. He
yeah.
seems to be. You could say he wears his emotions on his sleeves. So
Yeah.
there's no guessing if he had a good day or a bad day in the
Yeah.
market for sure.
So this was just about the time that the Trade Ideas was experimenting and playing around with machine learning and the AI Holly, which essentially was taking our back testing strategy and finding optimized ideas. So it was the early genesis of AI, and he
Hmm.
literally pulled me aside at the bar and one of those events, and he said, I've been waiting for this moment, and you're the first person I was going to ask, and it's time. So that's kind of how it came about because he was anticipating a need for more support, education, and
Hmm.
growth. At the time, Trade Ideas was probably only a handful, 6 or 7 people. Actually, by the time I got there, I think I was number 10. So,
I just laughed there because it was the same story with me. Dan usually knows what he wants before he approaches someone, because I just picked up the phone one day and Dan said, "Yeah," because I had spoken at an event down there in California as well, and he just picked up the phone one day. He said, "Yeah, you're working, you're consultant here now at Trade Ideas. Here's your fee. I'll see you Monday," and then just hung up the phone. I don't even know if I got a word in edgewise the whole time.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
He's fast
You
when he
know,
just makes a decision. That's for sure.
back to trading and back to the old trading floor. We used to have to drive to a floor, and I remember I said I don't want to forget this story because I think it's important for people to hear. There's actually two stories. One was the guy that Dan had kind of helping him, assistant, and I didn't want any assistance. I was just, I got this. I know what I'm doing. I'll figure it out.
Hmm.
And his name was Ron, and really nice guy. He was a pilot. And what happened to him was the worst thing that could ever happen to anybody. He came in, and his first day of trading live, he was following everybody in the room, and he made, I think, $50,000 in one day on Dell. Now
Yeah.
that ruined him. It ruined him because he spent the rest of his career dwindling money away. It was sad to watch because he never really understood why he made $50,000, and he kept chasing it and had no money management, no risk management. So that's a pitfall that you really need to be careful of. The worst thing that can happen is that you just get a giant windfall and you think this is easy.
Hmm.
The second and the most interesting of all, and you said it, I'm still here. When I was in that 1998 99 floor with everybody and Andy and Brad, and we'd have some guys that came in from Texas because that was where the center, the main company was from, Cornerstone. Austin, Texas was the hub of the original SOES trading, small order execution system, where you could just get 1,000 shares, bing, bing, bing.
Hmm.
Um, and so those guys would come out, and I'd see them, and I was like, oh my God, look at those guys. So and so, he made 70,000 today. He had a basket buy. Dude made 150 grand when Alan Greenspan lowered. Oh my God. I'm like, wow, jeez, not worthy. I'm not
Yeah.
worthy. Fast forward to 2003, 2004, 2003, completely different side of the mountain. The market went dark. It changed. It went to decimals. It was a bear market. It was no longer a bull market. These guys that had cojones of steel that never knew any better came into the market, and they bought high and they sold higher.
Yep.
The saddest thing and the takeaway that I'm getting at here is that when I was told that, remember so and so, he blew up, he blew up, he blew up. And I thought, how on earth could somebody who was so good at trading and made so much money turn around and give it all back? And for the first time, I realized that as I was watching them, thinking, God dang, I should be more aggressive like those guys. No, I shouldn't have. My conservative nature kept me in the game. And I learned quickly that when things weren't working, you have to pull back and retool. And even if that meant didn't trade for a few weeks, or maybe you lost money for 4 or 5 months, and you
Hmm.
needed to go and just find yourself and read and retool. There's been many of those chapters in my career. But I just couldn't believe that those guys that I had put on a pedestal blew up their accounts. That was almost sad to me. And I said, wow, I don't look up to those guys anymore. I kind of pity them.
Well, and that it goes to two things. It goes to A, to the adaptation that I was talking about earlier, right? You had periods of time where a certain trading strategy worked for you, and then it didn't. And instead of, woe is me, I gotta, you know, uh, rage against that light and say, hey, I hope that my trading style comes back. You found a new trading style. I think that's part of it. And the other is, as you mentioned, you hear the story all the time with lottery winners, and that's the example that
Mm.
I like to make. XYZ person won $10 million, and you're like, oh man, if I won $10 million, I would, pay off my house and put the rest in something that makes me 5-10% a year and live the rest of my days not worrying about whatever. But the story after story is they win it, they lose it all, and then they're back broke a couple months later, a couple years later. 2008, I think, right, definitely killed a lot of those. They bought houses they couldn't afford and mansions and all of this. So it's the same with trading. I think people come into trading and they're looking to make that big score, but the ones who trade for a long period of time are looking to make small, consistent gains over their life, right?
Let me just say, I went through that. I thought, boy, I did it. I found it. I'm set. I don't need to deal with customers anymore. I don't need to deal with employees anymore, clients. I got a knowledge base and nobody can ever take from me. Well, it was taken from me when the market switched, and all of a sudden you had to retool and figure out what worked again. So I went through that emotional, high of I'm set. Here we go.
Yeah.
To why isn't this working anymore? What the hell's happening? And that's the real challenge for most people to try and overcome in this business.
Yeah, and it will always be like that way. A lot of the strategies we employ today may not work down the road. I think there's some pure things that occur in markets, like trends and relative strength and things like that, that you can go back 100 years and see they worked. But the specifics of how and on what time frame and all of that are different, which leads me to kind of one of the last things I want to talk about is your move to swing trading and exactly how you did that and how you found success there. Because I personally believe, and this might just be me, that there's a lot of people out there trying to day trade who would be way better off swing trading. Because I think it's a personality split as well, right? We have Barry who runs our
Mhm.
trading room, and he's a fantastic day trader, but he also has the patience to sit and stare at a chart, a single security that he knows is in play for hours and hours every day before he hits a button. A lot of people, don't have that time, because I know there's a large majority of people who are trying to trade while they're trying to work and all that, or B, don't have that patience. So if you were talking to someone who is day trading right now, they're struggling with day trading, they want to try swing trading because they think that might either be better suited to their personality or the amount of time they have to devote or something. Just what's some tips on how you did it, and maybe that will help them make the leap as well.
Well, for me, it was I just got fed up with the noise. And so, as I said, I was forced to move back. Now, that was a double edged win because if you're going to day trade, like you said, your focus is all day long. It's like flying an instrument approach on an airplane
Hmm.
pilot for 6.5 hours. I used to be a pilot, and so I love those analogies. Um, I wanted to find other ways to make income. I wanted to turn trading into a side income rather than a main income. And when you have trading as your main income, one of the biggest psychological hurdles you have overcome is, oh, if I can just make $500 a day, I'll be fine. Well, what happens when you've lost 500? Do
Yeah.
you press it up and go for 1500 the third day? It starts to become a self-fulfilling anxiety spiral, and you wind up trading scared money. I don't care who you are, you will never ever do well trading scared money.
Yeah.
So I've been through a few of those chapters, didn't like that either. So having the opportunity, Andy and myself took a stab in some mortgage note stuff, and I've tried other things here and there, but it always has given me the time to watch the open, do my thing, answer emails, blah, 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 keep an eye. Oh, a price alert just went off. I better stop what I'm doing. And I set that price alert for a reason. As a swing trader, I want to know, okay, it looks like we're okay here. I'm going to go back to what I was doing. Now, as you and I have spoken, Michael, the end of the day is the swing traders mecca. You better find a way to get away from everybody at 3:45 Eastern, so you can tend your garden and you can find out what happened and what's closing strong and what are these candles going to look like. Was this candle red in the morning but reversed at the end of the day and has a wick and looks like a great reversal for tomorrow? Hey, it's a good thing you were doing an email at that time. So
Yeah.
what I'm getting at is you don't have the uh, propensity to want to overanalyze your trades as a day trader. You just kind of step back and you look at the end of the day, you look at price alerts as they come in, and you're constantly rotating in and out. And you get your cash back, your settlement, and you got some more powder to try some a couple new things. Me personally, my trading is I liken it to surfing. I just try and position myself to where maybe I'm sitting for a couple minutes, a couple days, but then the wave comes and I'm riding that momentum, do a couple turns and bail out the backside. That means stay with it for the full day. My perfect swing trade is a long green candle that closes at highs. Everybody sees that overnight on their earnings or on their homework, and they
Hmm.
start writing it down on their trading slip, like he does over there at Trader TV.
Yeah.
Watch this stuff. So in comes day number two, and I'm already positioned, and I've got a good position. This is my perfect trade. if I get a big gap, I'm going to take it on the open. But if I get a big run, I'm immediately flipping to the sell side. So for me, a day and a half of momentum is my perfect sweet spot that I feel like I can control and then bail out and then, reposition later rather than having to focus all day long and nurse these positions back to highs. I just take what I can get.
And I like that too. And we, again, I should have recorded, but before we got started, we were talking about, some shakeout trade that occurred, and Steve got, had a little bit worse of a time than I did just because I didn't look till a day and a half. And I know you're not advocating to just completely looking away, but what you're saying is that when you're swing trading for a longer period of time, it is much easier to do something else. And that's something that I really wish we can get across, and a lot of the gurus can get across, or stop with when it comes to day trading, is the whole, oh, I just look for the first 15 minutes a day and I hit a couple buttons and then I leave and that's my day trading. But when, what we're trying to say is that you have to be laser focused. If you're like, I am going to day trade and that's going to be my focus, you better be completely focused that entire time. Where what me and Steve are saying is that if you're going to look to swing trade, that's where you can kind of multitask a little bit, because a lot of your homework is done, right? You load up your trade ideas, you set your price alerts, you're doing your scanning at night, and then you need a period of time, maybe the last hour of the day is what I do and what Steve does, to say, hey, these are the trades I have to take. But you don't have to have that insane laser focus that you do all day. So find that kind of strategy that works for you. So because I'm interviewing trade ideas people, I think the final question is always going to be, what is so let me reword this. So at Trade Ideas, we have a lot of stuff, right? There's so much customization and filters and scanning and charting and different charting types and different scans and all of this that I think can really confuse a lot of people. So we talked about your style, and I would kind of classify you as a short-term swing trader. You're looking to buy something, and if you can get, 3 days a week, that, day and a half kind of
And
thing,
15%, I'm gone.
yeah, that's about it. So if someone's watching this and they're saying, okay, I either already trade like Steve or I would like to trade like Steve, what is kind of the one feature, let's say one indicator, and let's say one scan that you could take and give that person? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Steve describe it now, but then I'm going to send him with some homework, and he's going to build a cloud link. And in the description of this video and in the tweets, all of that kind of stuff, you'll be able to find that particular doc with that one. We're going to stick with one indicator and one scanner, so that someone, again, getting started can have a very simple place to start with and then build from there. And what I hope
I
is,
have a good idea.
okay, what I hope is by the end, the time I interview all of the traders, there's going to be a lot of different ones that people can choose from based off which, story and trading style they relate it to the most. That's kind of what I'm going to hit home. It's not what you think is the best or is going to make the most money. It's the one that you say, that makes the most sense to me. You're right. Steve was talking about, getting in a little bit early, looking for that gap or a little bit of momentum the next day and getting out, if that's your time frame. All right, Steve, what do you got for them?
Oh, as you were speaking, it came to me. I'm going to create a contrarian indicator,
Okay.
which uses the 50-day moving average, which is the most simple general health of a stock.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to find stocks that have been trending up nicely, but have fallen back a little bit, but have pulled back pretty oversold and are tagging their 50-day SMA. I can even back test it, and we can find out what the best hold time is and whatnot. So that's probably the hallway that I'm going to go down.
Okay.
I didn't want to forget this before I said it. So many new traders, they come in and they're focused on what's your win percentage.
Yeah.
And that is a horrible, horrible
Mm-hmm.
data point to base anything off of. Guess what, everybody? My win percentage is probably around 57, 58%.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound great, does it? But the point is I know when to cut the bad ones and how to let the good ones run. And when you do that, it doesn't matter if your win percentage is 57, 58%. If you want to be a micro scalper, bing, 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 bang, good luck to you. You're playing against the machines. That's
Mm-hmm.
when you start to need more of the 70, 80% win percentage, because you're taking small bites over and over and over and over again. Whereas I'm just looking to try and let the stocks breathe that are doing what they should, and the ones that aren't doing what they should at the end of the day. I can save myself a lot of money by cutting some of these ones at the end of the day, specifically something that's full red all the way down, closing at lows, definitively under, say, a 50-day moving average.
Mhm.
That right there is one of my rules. That's a signal candle to get out, because the next day it's probably not going to recover.
And again, that's beautiful. And not only that, we know, and this is something they teach us in the CMT, a lot of hedge funds out there have to report their trades. They have to report, if you're over a certain size, you have to report your trades, your holdings, all of that has to be transparent. And there was a study done where someone, God bless them, read the prospectus of all of these hedge funds and then went through and calculated their win percentage. And it turns out that 99% of trend following hedge funds, they have a sub 50% win rate. If you go through all of them, and if in the prospectus they said, hey, we're trend following, you go and you take a look at their win rate, it's sub 50%. So not only do I think that, I 100% agree with Steve that win percentage doesn't matter. But when I tell you that some of the biggest and best traders in the world, Jim Simons, who passed recently, had the best, without a doubt, the best hedge fund that ever existed in percentage returns, had a 37% win rate, and just again made more money than God himself on doing that. So I agree and I like that. So again, we're going to be, if you're someone who's interested in this, you're looking for a pullback to a major moving average, you're looking to, buy some strength, I'm assuming, off that moving average, hold it for a couple
Yeah,
days, and then that's
yeah.
your stop loss, that moving average.
There's there's a reason exactly. We'll just use that same theory as a risk management. If it holds the 50 the first place, if it rolls back over and takes the 50 out, then we want out. But the reason I'm doing this type of scan is I want to teach people contrarianism. The better the entry, the better the staying power.
Yep.
That's not to say that you can't buy breakouts, but there's a lot of breakouts that do get reversed very quickly in this market, and they're not fun. Something that's run a long way, and then you're asking for another third or fourth breakout.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, they're going to run out of money. So things that are strong, that have had a nice pullback, maybe there's a big institution that's rotating in off the 50, and they've got your back. So
Yep.
I want to instill in new traders the concept of being a contrarian in your entry and your exits. Like I said, if that trade were to rip for a day and a half, maybe you flip out on the second day when everybody's buying it at new highs. You're a seller, and you're starting to condition your mind how to become contrarian, because you will never do well if you follow the herd in this game. You're never going to create separation.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, of course, Steve, for coming by. I'm excited for this series. We will be doing external interviews again. Full disclosure, part of this is because I have a new baby and we're trying to, it's much easier to grab someone from Trade Ideas and say, hey, I've got a couple minutes without screams. Let's do an interview now. But I think these are going to be super fun. I'm hoping that you'll meet a whole breadth of people from Trade Ideas from different departments with different backstories, different trading styles. Some may not even trade. We'll just chat about other stuff. But I think this was great, and this is a great start to this. And if you're interested at all in the setup that Steve's talking about, the layout, make sure you're subscribed to Trade Ideas. Go to trade-ideas.com, sign up for that there. And then if you can't find it in any of the descriptions that's I'm putting it here, you can email in info@trade-ideas.com. You can just ask and say, hey, I saw the podcast with Steve, I want his layout, and we will give that to you there. So thank you all for watching. Thanks to Steve for coming by, and I'll talk to you guys soon.